It's very important to know what the responsibility is within a crew. As a director, for instance, I think I have explained that to you before. The director must always be responsible for the story you're about to tell. So how do you feel with that responsibility? Because in a lot of cases, people feel they're going to do everything. They get a video camera and you have the sound on the same track. How do you feel? What's your responsibility being a director?
I think, I guess for me as a director, I want to make sure that I'm really connected to the story that I'm focusing on, and that I do, I guess, as much research as I can prior to going in. I don't know, for some reason, when I'm connected to the story that I'm filming right now, it's almost like all I think about. It's always in my discussions with my cohort, um, and just to treat the participants in the film is like with respect, and to honor their story, like to not force things. And I'm finding out, like, being a filmmaker, being a director, nothing goes the way I thought it would go. So I'm always having to improvise or adjust quite a bit, actually. And the story kind of emerges from that, from life itself. That's kind of deep, but it's kind of true. And those are just some of the things.
Yes. What I want you to remember when you're a director, and of course, I'm always talking about documentary filmmaking, not fiction. It is important that you know what the story is as a director. As a director, if you're not sure, you have a producer, you have a sound person, you have a photographer, or maybe you're doing some of these jobs. What's most important is for you to hear, is for you to be able to listen to whoever your subjects are, because if the director doesn't know quite what the story is, you're in big trouble. Because while you have a crew and you have perhaps a company you're working for or an institution, or if you're not sure and if you're not listening long enough to what the story is, somebody else is going to take over. Most of the time, it's the producer who decides, oh, well, the story is this, the story is that. Or when you get into the cutting room, the person who is editing can take over because you don't know what the story is. So it becomes a different story than what you started in your mind, what you thought it was going to be. So the responsibility of the director is to know exactly what are you making a film about? What is the story? So you have to know, and you can only know if you can hear. If you really listen to your, it's perhaps sometimes it's a group of people or it's one person. This is where the story comes from when you're doing documentary filmmaking. It's not your story, it's somebody else's story that you are bringing to life. So, the main work at the very beginning, and I think I have explained that the last time you were with me, is to really hear. You might know what it is about, but you enrich your story when you're hearing the people that it concerns. If you really listen to those people, it's going to tell you how to go about telling that story in a different way than what you started with. Because the experience of the subject is the real one. And by hearing it, it becomes clear in your mind. You're thinking of images, you're thinking of how you're going to go about doing it the best way possible. So as a director, those are the first responsibility you have to think of. Because if you don't, you will always have producing or making a film that you will never be satisfied. And it's only because you didn't listen at the beginning all the way. The best gift you can give to the people that you are making a film about is to hear, is to listen. So therefore, it's time. If you come to say, "Oh, I have until 3:30 today, and that's it, I have to leave," that's not how you do documentary. You have to give it a lot of time and give the time to whoever is expressing themselves and can feel in trust with you. To a house, let's say, under reserve in the community with a crew. It is very, very, very intimidating for the subject. This is why I always tell people, and most people don't listen to me, but to start listening, it means not with 4 or 5 people that are coming in with you for the first time. You should go there on your own, just with a tape recorder, and just hear the voice of a person. Interview this person, just sound, so that the person is not worried, oh my God, am I dressed properly? Is my hair okay? Is my floor clean? You have 4 or 5 people there, and it's difficult. But if you begin to go on your own, and you're listening to this person who might be talking about something that happened to them, or their life story, or whatever that is, so doesn't have to worry about 4 or 5 people that is there watching. You're alone. And these words, that when the person feels at ease and safe, it's unimaginable how beautiful and sacred that first sound is. Because if the person feels relaxed and in trust, they will go into things that you can't imagine, that you don't know anything about, even though you might know what the subject is. The way this person is going to express itself is fantastic. It's like, for me, I just feel it's so sacred. It's like the waves, in the sea, like, whoa, they're talking about something really sad, and their face change, and the sound of the voice changes because they feel sad, they feel at ease, they can say things. Sometimes they can even cry, and it's nothing beats that. Then it changes. They're talking about something very happy or funny. So that first sound that you get from those people, don't forget, has to be done very professionally. When I say this, I mean the right equipment, not a recorder that goes off and on and is no quality to it. So that later on, when you come with a crew, you're talking about the same subject, but for the audience, the person sees who's talking, they know what this person looks like, how they feel, and all that. And then you can always go back to the first track of sound, which is always very special. You don't go there and say, "Could you repeat the same way what you told me the other day?" That's insulting. You're just listening. But do it with care and good equipment. So then later on, in the middle of whatever it is, a documentary you're doing, you can go back to the first sound this person gave you with other images. And those feelings you cannot repeat. It's always very, very special, especially in documentary filmmaking. Whereas if you come in, you say, "Oh, I'm going to make a film about so and so. I'm coming with a crew next week, certain day." When you were just talking about making the place safe, that's very difficult for the person who might be shy and don't know if this house is, people are shy about where they live often. And you don't get the same kind of quality and trust as if you come on your own first.
I have a couple of questions, but I'll go for the
Yeah.
one that I was going to ask was, what's your thoughts, I guess, on the ethics? I know you have to go through like a pre-development process, and in that pre-development, people kind of become characters, you know, and what are the ethics behind that? Like, how do you do that properly, I guess, even within an Indigenous context?
There are lots of things that you have to think about. First of all, anybody that you're working with, eventually you have to ask them for a release, which means that they're allowing you to film or to hear the story or whatever. And on these releases, if you don't know how to go about that, it's might be wise to, if you're taking a course in filmmaking or go to like CBC, the film board, to have an example of what a release is. And you have to also protect the person that is going to sign this release. And what I do, usually, I will always write a line under for this film only. If it's not written, it means that a foundation or an institution can use this on many other things which has nothing to do with what you're doing. So at times, some people feel abused because they signed a release for you as a director or producer or whatever, and then they discover that what they said or what the story is about all of a sudden is being changed or used by another person, which has nothing to do with the relations that you develop. So you have to not only protect yourself, but you have to protect the people that are signing these releases. Now, depending on how professional and who you're working for, sometimes people will make them sign a release in perpetuity, which means it's for always. Or some companies might say, "Oh, we want the rights for 5 years or 10 years." All has to do with regulations and laws that exist. So don't forget that when you decide to make a film, whether it's your family or doesn't matter who it is, you also have to think of this legal um, acceptance you have to do. Because let's say if you make a film, you're going to want it to be seen. You might want it to have it appear on television or other places where if you don't have the proper releases, the company, whether it's a channel or whatever, won't want to use it because you don't have the rights clear. Do you understand that? So all those things are to protect yourself, but also the people that are in these documents. So you have to think of that. Um, because often what happens, and something that I always tell the people I work with, it happens to me, it happens to everybody. Sometimes somebody interview you and you say, "Oh my God, I shouldn't have said this." You feel uncomfortable. And I always tell the people, if you have this feeling tonight when you go to bed and you say, "Oh my God, I told that story, I should have net," everybody does that. Don't worry about it. You tell me, I'm not going to use it or I'll erase it. You have to give the right of the people who are talking to you so intimately that they don't have to be afraid that you're going to use certain words in a different way, that it's abusive. All those things, as a documentary filmmaker, you have to think about. Don't trick people, or don't you say, you said this is that, I can use it. The release is signed. You can't do that. I know that a lot of people do, but that is so difficult for a lot of people. Sometimes they tell secrets that they have, or they tell something, difficulties or something embarrassing or whatever. And as they have confidence, they tell things that perhaps they are sorry they did it. So you have to make sure of this kind of trust, and that people shouldn't have to be afraid or worry that you're going to use something that they wouldn't want you to. Those things too are important. I think also what you have to remember, especially, it's a relation, is old photograph that becomes very, very, very important about what they talk about, or about who your relations are, and the behavior in families. And it's so rich. It's always. And again, I think what's important when you start working with an individual, or excuse me, a group of people, it's important to know what they have in terms of photograph, old photograph, that represents what they're talking about, or their lives, and who those people are there. So that at the beginning, it's always enriching if you ask about, do they have such collection? Do they have old photographs from the family, or whatever they're talking about? Because depending on the kind of asset that was used, you'll find that over the years, you look at a photograph, maybe there's 3, 4 people on it, and you see that, oh my God, it's getting very pale. It's erasing itself. And that again depends on how professional it was processed at the time. So that you don't lose everything. Let's say you have a photograph and then it's getting lighter. You should take a picture of this old photograph, like right now, to make a strong negative of what you have left, so that you can still recognize people and you know who they are. They're very, very precious. Often people say, oh, I'm going to throw this out because of this problem. But you should also find out, because you're working in documentary filmmaking, what they have in terms of material that you can use in what you're doing, and showing uh, that time that they're talking about.
I think this one is a bit sort of more about the process, and maybe your process. How do you marry visuals to go along with your subjects?
It depends what the story is. You often, people, when as you interview them, and depending what circumstances, you often have to go for, especially in documentary filmmaking, you have to go for images that comes from the past and the time that the person is talking about. So often people at home have images that you can use, but often not. So you have to go through archives. And in a lot of cases, you find things because it's very rich. The archives are very rich in terms of our people. You have to think back. The Hudson Bay Company, they have archives that really is straight from many, many communities where they were present. And they have a lot of photographs. When you go, when I was first making films, and I used to be so excited about doing research, going to the archives in Ottawa, for instance. Used to go there a lot. And you're always shocked and surprised to see about a community somewhere that you don't even know. They have all the material they have. Often about residential school, there's a lot of photographs that was taken by the church, by the Hudson Bay Company, all these people who were present with the children all the time. And it is amazing. Sometimes, I would come to the archives in Ottawa, and I discovered that a particular community, that there was a lot of material there from this community. I used to get in touch with them, with the band council, and said, "Did you know that there's incredible photographs about your people from a long time ago?" And that's very enriching, and it exists for a lot of people. So you have to know where to go. And in Winnipeg, as a matter of fact, there's a Hudson Bay Company there. They have archives. It's very, very rich. You wouldn't believe what you can find there. And a lot of people don't seem to know that the Hudson Bay have these archives. And it touches everybody in the country, because the Hudson Bay, for the longest time, were the only store that was present at the reserve level. So the history is incredible. So you have to go and look, and you find things. It's so exciting. Often they're talking about something that it doesn't exist anymore, a custom or some experience. And it's wonderful to go into animation to describe it, what he has in mind. And often also, if you are an animator, or you ask them to do drawings about what they're talking about, and that also is very enriching. You can animate whatever it is they draw about, and that's also another way of hearing it and seeing it. One time I was doing this program with the Lillooet people in BC, in Mount Currie, BC. And there was a woman there, her name was Marie Leo. And she told me her life story. And she was the last one who had gone through a custom having to do with puberty in Mount Currie. So I said to Marie, "You're going to have to make drawings." I said, "There's no way I'm going to find archives to all what you're saying here." Because she described the whole process, which lasts 3-4 months. She said, "I can't draw." I said, "Sure you can draw." And I had her come to my house. She stayed with me for a few weeks. Well, she was very shy about it, but she made drawings about everything she talked about. If you have a chance, you could see this. It's called Lillooet. And we did a children's drawing book, description of what puberty is when you first menstruate. It's just beautiful. It looked like a child is drawing about an historical custom. And that also, like what you say when you're talking, I don't know if it's your father you were describing, it's very, very enriching. You'd be surprised of how you can animate these drawings and how important they become.
Regarding lights, I don't plan on taking lights or bringing lights, so you seem to be a master at using natural lights, watching your stuff. So any advice on?
Yeah, you have to choose the time, because sometimes, especially if you work inside a house, sometimes there's not much windows, and you can only use regular lights. It's nice to bring a light kit just in case that you need to use it. But again, once you do, don't intimidate whoever you're working with, because when you start putting lights all over the place and people start feeling worried, about what they look like. So everything has to be as natural as possible. Sometimes you can film without uh, having extra lights, and it's very moody and it can be wonderful. It all depends on what comes in, what kind of window they have, or if you're doing it outside. But when you're coming with a lot of equipment, you have to take the time, not overcrowd a, a room, so that the person feels, oh my God, I'm getting out of here. I don't want to have them taking my pictures. See, you have to make the person feel not worried. But to get to that, you have to be with that person alone with this person, and so that you're protecting them from whatever comes from outside, so that they're not afraid to talk.